Hey guys, this is Wojtek, and today we're going to continue with part 3 of our C++ Fundamentals course, talking about animation notifies. Specifically, we're going to take a look at creating notify events from C++, which are going to allow us to essentially create single notify executions. They don't have too much visibility outside of just this one notify call. But then we're also going to take a look at UAnimNotifyStates, which are a little bit more robust as they provide us with the notify begin events, the notify tick events, which occur during the execution of this notify, as well as the ending. So let's get right into it. Alright guys, so in this tutorial we're going to create a new UAnimNotify as well as a new UAnimNotifyState. And then we're going to tie those two new classes to this medium punch throw sound effect. And what that's going to do is, in our game, when we throw our punches, we're going to hear a little whooshing sound that kind of simulates, if he was wearing clothing, making a little noise when he's throwing his punch. So, to do that, we're going to have to first create these two new classes that represent our notify objects. And to do so, we're going to go to our C++ classes folder, just somewhere in here. We're going to right-click and say New C++ class. And then we're going to say Show All Classes, because if you notice, if we don't do that, it's kind of limited in what Unreal Engine shows you. So if we say All Classes, then we look for UAnimNotify. You'll see there's our state, as well as the animation notify. So we're going to create this guy first, and if we click next, we're going to give it a name of punch throw anim notify, and we're just going to create this class. Alright, so we have our class created, and now we're going to go back to Unreal Engine Editor and create a UAnimNotifyState. So again, right click, New C++ class, show all classes, and then we're going to look for UAnimNotifyState. So pick that as your base class, click next, and we're going to call this guy punch throw UAnimNotifyState. And again, we're going to recompile and just wait for this to come back. Alright, so we're recompiled with our classes now in place. So we have these two new notify and notify-state classes. And now we can get into the sort of the meat of the tutorial, where we're actually going to hook up this new sound and attach it to these notify states. So to do so, what we're going to do is we're going to expand our player character a little bit. And we're going to include this new sound effect as part of the player character definition. So if we go to our player character header, you'll notice right somewhere about a third down of the file, we have the sound cue definition. And we're going to replicate this. And when I say replicate, I'm going to just copy and paste it, because we're not too concerned about the sound cue definition here. We just want another sound effect to play with our animation notifies. So we're going to call this punch throw sound cue, and that's all okay as far as the U property definitions go. Then we're going to go to our player character CPP file, and in the constructor we're going to create this new punch throw audio component with our new sound cue. So again, I'm just going to copy pasta the punch sound cue definition, and I'm just going to very quickly go to our tutorial resources, audio, bring in our sound effect. So to do so, you grab it and you drag it into your content pane window, and there's our sound. And then we're going to just create a new sound cue out of that. So right click, go to sounds, sound cue, and we're going to call this punch throw sound cue. We're going to pop open the sound, we're going to right click, find our wave player, drag the output node from the wave player to the input node on the speaker, and then we're just going to click on the wave player node here and select our medium throw punch throw. That's why I wasn't finding it. And then when we play it back, it should just play this little whooshing sound. Okay, great. So there's a sound cue. And like I said, we're going to kind of glance over this part of the exercise. And we're going to copy the reference. So there's our reference copied. And we're going to go back to Visual Studio. And within our sound cue definition, when we're bringing in this sound cue object through our object definition and assigning to the component, we need to now point it against the new sound cue location. So there's a new sound cue location, and we're going to say this is the punch throw sound cue object, and then we say, hey, is it did it succeed? Do we have this entity loaded within our constructor? And if the answer is yes, then we can bring it in down here, and this is going to be our punch throw sound cue. And then the only thing we're missing is our punch throw audio component. We have our punch one, but we need to create a new one. So I'm just going to stub in these details first. Punch throw audio component, and this is going to be the name of the variable. We're going to attach the root component, and then let's just flip back to the player character header. And we're going to create this new, oops, it's too many data types, punch throw audio component. Okay, so there's that. And these guys should now be a little bit more happy. And the last thing we need to do is just, in our begin play, ensure that we assign, I'm just going to add some more comments here, load the punch throw sound cue object. And sorry, in our begin play, we're just going to replicate this logic here yet again. So we need to check that the punch throw sound cue is not null, and that the punch throw audio component is not null. And then we're going to say throw audio component, set the sound. And you may notice that we're already getting a bunch of code duplication happening here. And that's okay. As we flip back to our player character series, we're going to start stepping through some of this logic and ripping it out and replacing it and refactoring and making it just a little bit more efficient, so we're not always copying and pasting this code. But for the sake of this exercise, let's just get us some additional sounds that we can leverage in our UAnimNotifys. Alright, so we have our sound components in place. And I apologize for the slight detour to get this set up, but it's always good to repeat these lessons. So the more practice you get, the easier this will become. But let's go back to our animation notifies. So we'll start off with the notify first, before we move on to notify state, because we've already done this one. As you'll notice, it's right here under the attack start notify state, but I do want to show you how the other events behave. So let's go to notify. And we're going to pop open the header definition. And you'll notice this class is pretty empty. There's not much going on here. If we pop open the CPP file, it is also empty. But as we look at our header definitions, we'll notice that our notify inherits from this UAnimNotify, and when we control click on it, it will take us to the class definitions. And as we're looking at this class, there are a couple of things to note. So there's this receive notify function that is primarily designed for blueprint access. So when you create your notifies and you want to hit them from your blueprint definitions, this is the guy you're going to be communicating over. But since we're in C++ land, we're going to be looking at this guy here. And you'll notice the signatures are identical. It's just that this guy is the C++ native notify method. So, because we're inheriting from this class, we can simply now overwrite this method. And to do so, we're going to grab the method signature, and I'm just copying it, going back to our punch throw UAnimNotify header, And I'm going to create a public section just for better code organization, and we're going to bring in this class, or sorry, this method. But because it is a method we're overriding, we need to include this override directive. It's going to tell our engine that, hey, this notify method needs some details in our CPP file. Now that we have it defined in our header, let's actually make reference to it. So our return type is void. So I can take this whole method signature actually, and I'm just going to pop it right here with 2 brackets. But you always want to make sure to include your reference to the actual class you're overriding this method for and implementing it for. So there's our notify. I mean, it's pretty straightforward. There's a couple of attributes that come along for the ride, which is our skeleton that is attached to the animation that's currently playing back, as well as the animation itself. But for our purposes, all we're going to do is we're going to hook up this notify to our animation montage and then just spit back a message to the screen. And to do so, we need to include engine.h. And then, because I'm feeling a little bit lazy, I'm just going to copy the log statement from our other notify into our punch throw UAnimNotify. I'm just going to change the color on this guy to orange. So whenever this notify fires, we're going to throw this message in color of orange that's going just to print back the function name and where it's coming from. So let's recompile and now hook this up to our animation montage. So with our project recompiled, let's pop open the Unreal editor and actually attach these, attach this notify to our animation montage. And to do so, if you go to our tutorial resources folder, animations, you'll find the melee fist attack montage. And if we scroll down in here, you'll notice we have our pre-existing notify states, which are fine, and we're going to leave them kind of where they are. But we're also going to include now a new track, so track number 2, where we're going to bring in our new throw notify. So we're going to say add notify, and then you'll notice in our list there's punch throw UAnimNotify. Cool. So this guy is going to be responsible for playing back a sound when we throw our punch. So we kind of want to figure out where do we want to actually make the sound effect. And maybe we'll do it right here. So right as he's coming in, it's going to make a little whooshing sound and then hopefully connect with our object. And likewise, we're going to do the same thing for our other punch. And I think we'll do it right here. So there's our secondary notify. And then lastly, we'll do one maybe here. Okay, so there's our 3 notifies. Now if we save and go back to our game, and actually, you see they're already playing back as I was just manipulating this animation window. Let's see if we can repeat this process. There it goes. So you can see I don't even need to run the game. And as soon as this animation is running, all of my notify events are playing back. And there's our orange one. But let's be good scientists and actually start up the game and make sure all the punches are throwing the animation or notification events. So there's one. And you can see as we're switching punches, the notify is playing back. Excellent. So step 1, done. Now let's go ahead and add in our UAnimNotifyState. And then we're just going to flip back between our audio effects and see how those sort of play out within this configuration. So going back to Visual Studio, we're going to open up our UAnimNotifyState, and we're going to start off with the header. And again, you can see it's inheriting from this base class. And if we step into it, similar to our notify, you'll notice these blueprint-enabled notify events, except there's 3 of them here. And likewise for C++ methods. So we have a notify begin, a tick, and an end. And as you can probably deduce, the begin is called at the beginning of the event. And let's just pull up the montage here to quickly illustrate. So there's our begin, right there, that red line. And then there's the duration. It's that sort of blue chunk in between onto the next red line, which is then the end of our notification. So we have the option of capturing those 3 states, which is really quite powerful because we can now make determinations as to what is happening at these 3 different sort of points in time and affect our game logic, our behaviors, our animations, sounds, particles, whatever we want. And you'll notice these method signatures also come with a couple of additional pieces of information. So we've got, on the begin, we've got total duration. So we can say, hey, this is going to start and it's going to end at X. In the tick, we also have the frame delta time. So how much time has passed since the last time we called the tick? So again, you can make determinations based on this information. The rest of it is almost identical to UAnimNotify. We got the mesh component as well as the animation, tied to that mesh component playing back. Cool. So let's take these 3 methods and let's overwrite them, and then we'll spit back some log messages to the screen just to showcase that everything's working correctly. So I'm going to copy these guys, go back to my notify state header. There it is. And similar to our notify, we're going to say public. And I'm going to paste in these 3 method definitions with the inclusion of the override directive at the end, because we do want to tell the compiler that we are overriding. And I'm just going to get rid of these spaces by the pointers because of reasons. And they're not very good reasons, but I do like to keep things a little bit tidy. And these guys look not too bad. Okay, so there's our method signatures, and now we're going to implement them. So let's copy these guys again. Go back to our CPP file. And then I'm just going to strip off the virtuals. And I'm going to strip off the override as well as the ending semicolon, because we don't need any of this. Oh my goodness. There we go. And last one. And then always remember to include your class name as part of your method signature so the compiler knows who it's actually implementing these methods for. And there we are. So, similar to our notify, let's bring in the engine. And we're going to use this just to print back some messages to the screen. So I'm just going to steal this little debugger line. And I'm going to pop it into each one of these methods. But I'm going to change it from orange to purple, blue, red. Why don't we go yellow? We'll go yellow. Okay. And let's recompile and then see what this looks like in our Unreal editor. Okay, so we're all recompiled. Let's pop open Unreal editor. And we're going to go back to our melee fist attack montage. And let's just make this a little bit bigger. And we're going to scroll down to our notify section again. And we're going to add a 3rd track. And we're going to do the exact same thing. So we're going to say add notify state. And we're going to bring in our punch through UAnimNotifyState. And you'll notice we have this little running bar that we can stretch out for our start and end states, as well as the stuff in between. And we're just going to repeat this exercise for the other punches. I'm just going to randomly stretch out the section just so we can see some stuff logging to the screen. Okay, so we now have 3 tracks, and we can have a whole pile of these denoting sort of different behaviors of our animations. But for right now, we're just going to go with these guys. And let's now play our game and see what happens. Oh, look, we don't even need to play it because we can see it right here. But, again, let's be good scientists and start up our game. Throw the punch. And you notice there's our notify tick as well as our notify end, and the start just flew by because there's too much of the messages there. Alright, so we have our notifies working, both the notify state as well as the notify. Now let's actually tie them into that sound effect and see, something a little bit more useful than just the log messages. And similar to our attack start notify, what we're going to do is we're going to examine the mesh component. We're going to grab the mesh owner. We're going to cast them to our player character object, and then we can say attack start. Wow, wait a minute. This is for attack start. We need to say play this new sound cue. So let's just flip back to our player character for a second. And you'll notice I made one small judgment error, which was putting in the audio component as a private. And I'll show you why that was a judgment error in just a second. So let's go back to our punch throw UAnimNotify, this guy here, and we're going to take this chunk of logic and just drop it right underneath here. And you'll notice all of this stuff, for the most part, comes in just fine because we're reusing almost all of the method signatures between these classes. The only thing we're missing is the inclusion of our character definition. So if we go for fundamental character, that's going to take care of this problem. Now, let me show you why that judgment error is going to bite us in the butt, because I have no way of getting at this audio component. And so we say 0f. This guy ends up being a private, and it's going to give us runtime or sort of compilation exceptions saying I can't deal with this. So to correct it, we're simply going to take our audio component and push it up to a public section. So in this case, just right above here. And we'll get rid of the double semicolon. Now going back to our notify, you'll notice if we rerun this and we say punch throw audio component, the sound cue, which is still private, has a little lock icon, while the punch throw audio component doesn't. And now we can say play, and we're going to say play 0f to start at the beginning of our audio component. What else can we do with this? Well, we should probably double check that this isn't already playing when we throw our punches. So we can say, hey, the player is a null, and player punch throw why is that punch throw audio component. There we go. So if it's not playing, ensure that it plays when this event occurs. So let's recompile and see what happens. Okay, our project is recompiled. Let's go back to here, And now, when we throw our punches, you hear this cool little whoosh sound. And when we actually punch something, it's a whoosh and a hit sound. Very cool. So that was simply with the notify in place. Now we can do the exact same thing with our notify state. So if I take this chunk of code and I just bring it over to our notify state, and I'm not going to do it in the tick or in the end. I'm just going to do it in the begin as well. I'm just going to pop it in here. We're going to take it out, or rather comment it out in our notify section so it doesn't play back twice. And we'll even take off this log message so it's not polluting our files too much. Let's just make sure this guy looks okay. Yep, that looks good. And then the only thing we're missing is the header definition. So there's our character, and let's recompile. Okay, so everything's done recompiling. Let's open up Unreal. And when I play our game, we still have our cool whooshing sound. But this time it's coming from the notify state. And when we punch, we get both effects going at once. So that is how you get notifies and notify states running from your C++ code against animations coming in from the rest of the engine. Now, that's all fine and dandy, but what if I want to do this from Blueprint? And I've received a number of questions over the last couple of tutorials from folks saying, hey, this is great, but I'm not a C++ developer. How can we do this in Blueprints? So it's even easier in Blueprints. For the most part, you can create a new track. So we're going to add a fourth track. And then we're going to say add notify and just say new notify. And I'm going to give this a name of BP notify. And then we're just going to repeat this step for the other sections. So I can say add notify, skeleton notifies, and there he is. So there's that guy. Notify. And these are just the regular notifies. If you want to do notify states, you can do, again, the exact same thing, create blueprint versions of them and call them within your animations. But we'll just do this one for sake of argument. So let's save our montage, and there's our notifies. And now we want to gain access to them. And this is the only sort of different thing in comparison to our C++ code, as the notify events are normally not accessible through the player blueprints. So if we go to third-person CPP, blueprints, and our third-person character, if we open up the blueprint and go to our event graph right here, and now if I right-click and I say BP underscore notify, or BP notify, BP underscore notify, not really finding it. And that is because the notify events come from the animation sequences, which the third-person blueprint by default does not have access to. But our animation blueprint does. So if we go back to our content pane and go to mannequin animations, and then third-person animation blueprint, and we pop this guy open, and again on the event graph, I'll just make this a little bit bigger. This is where the default boilerplate is jumping. Logic is in place. So we're just going to right-click in here somewhere, and we're going to look for BP notify. And you'll notice it's right here. So event UAnimNotify BP notify. And what this says is we're going to create this new notify node, and every time this event is triggered, we can now say do something. So in this case, we're just going to say print string. And we're going to say, what are we going to say? I am a blueprint notify. So let's take a look at how this is going to play out. We have our, going back to our animation, we have our BP notify, and for every punch, we should print this message when we run the game. So let's try it. There's our guy. We throw our punch. And it did actually fly by, but we're not seeing it because of this additional noise. So let's just clean that up real quick. So I'm going to take off the tick message, and I'm going to take off the end message, and we're going to just recompile. Okay, we're recompiled. Let's try this again. There we go. I am a blueprint notify. So as you can see, guys, these things are fairly straightforward to implement. Obviously, it's all of the logic that goes behind those notifies that's going to be crucial and important that you focus on. But the boilerplate that allows you to hook up these animation events to some sort of C++ logic, I mean, that stuff isn't too bad. So we're going to keep iterating over some of these examples and then eventually go back to our player character series, where we then start tying in all of this stuff to make our third-person mannequin just a little bit more interesting. And we're going to give them all kinds of fun little superpowers. Okay, thank you for tuning in, and I hope to see you guys next time.